Welcome back to Dram Antics. Today we're going to go through yet another of our food pairings. Now, as I mentioned in the first episode, my name's Brett. I'm the regional brand ambassador for William Grant & Sons as their single malt specialist. And being that I can't travel at the moment, what I thought was we could do some food pairings which kind of takes us around Southeast Asia, given that I can't get on a flight to do it in the actual flesh. So what I'm going to go through today is a really exciting little pairing. It's one of my favorite things about going up to Bangkok in Thailand, and that is their national dish known as pad thai. So for those of you that haven't had pad thai before, we need to get you out from under that rock that you're living in. But essentially what we have is a flat, dry rice noodle that is then partnered up with an absolute monstrous amount of flavor. Now, core ingredients behind this particular dish are things along the lines of tamarind sauce, oyster sauce, fish sauce. We've got shrimp in here, a lot of garlic, a lot of onion, just an absolutely overwhelming amount of flavor. And it is something that does come off in that sort of ugly, delicious kind of format. But I've tried to dress the plate up a little bit, make it look a little bit prettier than when it first came out of the tapao boxing or the takeout boxing that we get here in Singapore. So what I did today was went to what I kind of consider the Thai hub of Singapore when it comes to food. And that is a very famous little building out in the east or just out on the outskirts of the downtown area called Golden Mile Complex. So if you've been into Golden Mile, you'll know what an amazing place it is. It is basically little Bangkok. There are so many food options in there. And while there is an absolutely monstrous amount and really interesting amount of dishes that do come from Thailand, what I really wanted to do was find something that I thought was really synonymous with Bangkok specifically and with that kind of food scene that they do have over there. So for those who are able to see, which is hopefully all of you, what I have in the background here is a very special little dram that only came out in 2019 from the Balvenie. Now, this is a part of the Stories series, so it's a really beautiful part of the portfolio because the entire purpose to that Stories series was for us to really celebrate those who actually work at the distillery and those that have had impact outside of just their regular forte when it comes to what they actually do in the job. So this was an experiment that was first put together in 2002 by Ian Miller, who at the time I believe was the distillery manager of both the Balvenie and Glenfiddich. And essentially they were doing an annual shutdown where they clean components of the distillery, they basically go through and do any refurb they need, a whole bunch of things like that. And essentially he looked and said, we've got an opportunity here to do something a little bit unique for Speyside. And that was to try peating a whiskey in a region that isn't overly known for that peated style. Now, what they did was they sourced the peat from roughly around 20 miles northeast of the distillery. So we're really talking about this sort of top eastern end of Scotland, of the mainland. So it's a bit more unusual than the peat style that we see from Islay, which has that real majority seaweed kind of influence delivering those big medicinal profiles. And instead with this, we get that heather influence coming in a lot more. Now, if you haven't heard of heather before, that's totally understandable. It's not something that we see too commonly in Southeast Asia, I don't think. But what it really delivers when it comes to a peat profile is this beautiful kind of floral, slightly citrusy, very earthy, and quite different from what we actually see coming out of Speyside. There's some pretty subtle creamy notes coming through in there. It's something that doesn't really overpower the Balvenie signature profile that we've spoken about so many times when I've been out on the road, and that's that really beautiful kind of honeyed nature to it. So I'm hoping that this pairing goes really well. I haven't actually tried this combination before, but I figured what better place to do it than on camera where I can post it and either really show what it is to experiment with your pairings. As I said in the last episode, it should be explorative. You should really be looking at what kind of opportunities you have to try something you might not think would work, but that you could definitely put together. And I think with the beautiful dish that we've got today, paired with a beautiful whiskey that's going to be a little bit more on the savory lines against the sweet nature of this particular dish, I'm hoping for pretty special things. Alrighty, now, first things first. Let's have a quick rotator of this plate. It looks absolutely gorgeous. We've got some shrimp on the top there, the firm tofu. I scattered peanuts and chili around because I'm a big fan of both of those flavors, and I think that the peanut oils that will come out should work really nicely when it comes to our pairing with the whiskey. One thing that is going to be a little interesting is obviously I've got this quite nice little piece of lime showing up here. It has sort of yellowed on the sides of it purely because of the fact it was in a hot box. So that's understandable, but essentially I'm going to try and put some of this all over so we get that citrusy burst coming in. A little bit of acidity that should work quite nicely with any luck for our dish today. I'll park that on the side there. So, how are we going to tackle this? First and foremost, I think when it comes to whiskey tastings, and it's something I forgot to mention in the last video, one thing that is a really good idea is to acclimatize your palate. So it is a little early in the day today for me to be jumping on a dram, but I'm definitely going to have a crack at it. I think we're pushing around 11:30 in the morning, but the tough jobs of being a brand ambassador. So beautiful little dram coming in. Now, on the nose, the one thing that's really exciting with this particular whiskey is that it does have this relatively fragrant peat note. One thing that I found quite interesting is that the Balvenie is not shy to tell us that this was peated in grain. So when we first did that peat in the kiln, it hit up to about 30 parts per million. So in the grand scheme of things, if we're comparing to some of the whiskeys coming out of Islay, what we do see is a little bit lower than the standard, but also still sitting quite high up there. Now, one thing that I was interested to find out is by the time it actually hits glass, what we're more looking at is probably around only 5 parts per million. And so being so low down, it's really impressive that this can actually hold up as much as it does. That peat sort of smoky, savory kind of profile really overwhelms at the very start. Now, we have actually driven our ABV, which I'm not sure if this camera will pick it up, but we're up to 48.3% ABV. So we have increased from the standard bottlings of around 40 to 43. But one thing that's just beautiful is whenever you get that additional alcohol, it gives you opportunity to sort of play around a little bit. Potentially want to cut it down with some water if it's a little bit too strong. For some, that extra alcohol really is a flavor carrying component. So that's a bit of an introduction. I'll run you through a little bit more as we get in, talk about some of the flavors that really do work quite nicely. I'm super excited about this one. I miss going up to Bangkok. It is a city that I'm always so excited to walk into and so exhausted when I leave, purely because I have such a great time when I'm over there. And the food is absolutely one of those things that I desperately miss, and I can't wait to get up there again. But first dram of the morning, here we go, Sanjivar. Yeah, all of those flavors that I really love about this whiskey, big and pungent peaty notes, that kind of citrusy note that I was talking about really does kind of come through, but it is still quite light. One of the things I also find quite magical about this is that you do get that really signature sweet kind of honeyed profile from the Balvenie, but it's so beautifully balanced against that Speyside peat. Now, I've been staring at this dish for a minute. As I said, it is one of those things that reminds me of being in Bangkok. I miss all of my mates up there. I can't wait to get back up again. But when it comes to trying to live our best outside of the circumstance that we're currently in, what better way to do it than through a cheeky little morning food pairing. So here we go. I'm going to try and pull some of this apart so you can really see what's going on in there. We've got the garlic shallots at the top. Really, really dense rice noodle on the inside there. Some beautiful shrimp. I'm going to rip the tail off this guy real quick. So we've got that guy. And then let's bundle this up. I'm going to try and make sure this isn't too messy, given the fact that it is going to be a little bit all over the place. So we'll see how delicately I can round this up onto the spoon. Now, it might not look like much, purely because we've got a lot of noodles going on. I'm going to throw a piece of tofu in, and sure enough, let's get this shrimp guy and one of the bean sprouts on there as well, which is not working out for me so good, but that's all right. Here we are. All right, so we've got our spoon, we've got our dram. Let's have a quick last nose of that. Here we go. Yeah, that's not a way to describe it, but yeah. Yeah, look, I think the thing that really works for me with this is anytime you put that light kind of delicate peat style up against something that does have these kind of undertones of fishiness. Now that's a mixture of that oyster sauce as well as the fish sauce. We've also got fresh shrimp in there. It's gonna bring out this really, really elevated and beautiful component to the tasting of these. Having the crushed peanuts around is a really interesting one because it adds that little bit of extra oiliness. We've got all sorts of things going on. A little fresh burst coming from all of these little bean sprouts that are inside here. Let me move my spoon over so you can see. We've got that fresh burst coming from the citrus out of that lime that was squeezed over. We've got textural change with crunchiness from peanuts. We've got that firm tofu that's been fried up. There's bits of egg scattered throughout as well. It really all just kind of binds together. The whiskey complements this in that it's got that sweet level coming from that honey profile. We've got fruitiness in there, which kind of works nicely against any of the umami and sort of salty profiles, that real savory nature. There's brown sugar in the actual dish, so we've got sweetness coming through in a completely different sort of capacity. It's just, there's so much going on, but a really exciting way for us to have a look at how Thai food can work really nicely. One thing that I always recommend, be very cautious when you're pairing anything that has an abundance of chili. Now, I'll see if this will pick up, but on my finger there, you can see we've got these chili flakes that are all through it. Now, these aren't too spicy, it's more of a flavor profile, which is lovely. But anytime you've got really, really pungent and dominant flavors, if you're in Singapore, things like sambal that have that really big dominant chili. Oh my God, it caught me. Oh. Whew. Too early for whiskey in the morning for me. Anytime you've got those kind of chili, garlic, really, really strong dominant kind of flavors, anything hyper fishy, for me, it just is something you've got to err on the side of caution. And that's mostly because we want to allow the whiskey to shine through. A lot of the time, whenever we think of food pairings, we do tend to align more with things that we'd expect to go well with wines because that's where most people sit. As I said before, I highly recommend that you get out there, experiment, find your favorite dish. I've got a few more of these coming through, so I'm hoping that you're enjoying them. With that said, I'm going to get in and enjoy my lunch and see how much of this I can get through. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Slan Javar. Come back and let's do this again.